Hi Year 11. Today we're going to be looking at coping strategies when you are faced with a Victorian text in your English language exam which you have not seen before. The number one mistake I see with a lot of answers on both paper 1 and paper 2 of the AQA English mock is that people get hung up on trying to approach the bits they don't really understand and try to almost prove they understand those bits, rather than reading the text, seeing what they understand, and just answering the question. And I think that's because it can appear quite scary and like the examiner is trying to catch you out. They're not. What you have to do is simply look at what you do understand, pull out the methods and words you do understand, and use those to answer the question. They don't need you to talk about everything. And so there's a little bit of psychology involved. There's a little bit of nerve involved. You need to overcome your fear of the fact that it's quite a challenging piece of reading that you've been asked to do, and you need to use context clues. You need to use similar words and other such strategies to make sure that you overall understand it. They will never give in a GCSE a piece where you wouldn't understand anything. You will always understand the main point of it. And once you do that, you can then pull out key parts from it. So today we're going to be looking at a piece of non-fiction from Mrs. Beeton's book of household management. When you get your non-fiction 19th century text, you will usually get a little paragraph telling you what it is at the top. So here are some images of Victorian life. Here is a kind of regular family, but this person here isn't their daughter. This person here is their maid. So this lady here is an employer. She would be working with a maid. If somebody was quite rich, you can see here all of these people are servants. This lady is a housekeeper. She runs the house. And all of these people are maids. I think this lady probably be a governess, so she'll be looking after the children. And all of these are butlers and grooms and things. So depending on how wealthy you were, if you're a woman in Victorian times, you were an employer. And you were often employing people to do work for you. One of the things you'd also be expected to do was be able to cook, whether or not you did it yourself. And you can see how lavish some of the parties that these ladies were organising were. You would get married between the ages of 15 and 20 usually. So suddenly you would go from effectively living with your mum and dad like a child or a teenager to suddenly having to run massive things like this on your own. And the housework, whether or not you had a maid, I mean in this picture you've got a lady and her maid, a lady and her maid. They're doing their housework. It's not that easy on a practical level because they didn't have machines. This is what they did before they had vacuum cleaners, no Dysons or Hoovers. They hit their carpets with a carpet beater to get the dust out. And here, this is them doing their laundry, and they have to put the sheets through a wringer to squeeze the water out to help them wash. This was the equivalent of a washing machine, but you can still see they're mainly doing it by hand. So this is the situation that a lot of women were in. And so Mrs. Beeton came along, and what she did was she wrote a book that was like a textbook that told you how to do it, told you how to run your house. So there's your background of this Victorian text. And the topic of this text is a new and exciting kind of food. So we're going to read through our first reading. So we know it's about Mrs. Beeton, we know it's about home life and strategies at home. So you've got that in your mind, and you want to give your a first read through, looking very much at what the facts and what the reader's perspective is. So provisions and household requisites. Requisites, you might not know what that means. Provisions, you might not know what that means. Hold it in your mind and look at the context. So read the first paragraph, it should introduce it. Tinned meats, soups, fish, poultry, fruit and vegetables now occupy an important place in our food supply, being available at any time and handy substitutes when fresh provisions are difficult to procure. Okay, so you've got tinned. We know what that means. And then we've got meat, suits, fish, poultry, fruit and vegetables. So if we're looking up here, provisions and household requisites, we can guess that this probably means food. Probably means things you need to buy in, yeah, from the context. In the respective chapters will be found recipes giving full, I think that's instructions for their use. Sorry, something happened with a cut and paste. Preserved and tinned provisions. The preservation of meat and other foods by pickling, salting and smoking has been in use since early times in many lands. Okay, so it sounds Victorian, but look back over it, break it down. Preservation. Most people know preservation means making something last longer. So they're saying pickling, salting and smoking. These are ways of making what? Meat last longer. Okay? In many lands, so across the world. The primitive methods of exposing slabs of meat or split open fish and fowls to the fierce rays of the sun or to the action of smoke have been improved upon. So you might know what a fowl is, or you might not, but you can make a guess. If you've got meat and you've got fish, you can probably work out it's some kind of animal product we eat. Yeah, fowls actually mean chickens and turkeys and things. But if you were in the exam and you're thinking, what's a fowl? Have a look at the context. It's in a list of 3 with meat and fish. So even if you didn't make the leap to it meaning chickens and turkeys, you would still be, okay, it's some kind of animal product we eat. And what they're saying that in primitive times, they used to put it under the sun to dry it, and now, or they used to put it into smoke, and now those things have been improved upon. A large choice of smoked hams and bacon, the pork having undergone some process of curing before the actual smoke exposure, is now afforded. And other dried foods usually found in the market are smoked tongues, smoked and salted herrings, mackerel, salmon, eels, turtle, etc., smoked breasts of geese and sausages. So you've got a long list here of what, well, it's meat, fish and fowl, isn't it? Yeah, it's creatures that have been smoked as a preserving method. Yeah, she keeps saying smoked. So even if you didn't know what smoked was, you know, like smoked salmon and stuff like that, you could work out this is some kind of cooking, some kind of preparation of food, and that you can find it in the market. So you're not making it yourself, you're buying it. Now there's lots of other little phrases here, like is now afforded. Do you need to know what that means? Not really. You can work it out. I mean, if you can afford something, you can get hold of it, yeah? So yes, so you can get hold of it, and there's a large choice and a large list of meats that are smoked. So when you put that together, you're thinking, what are the key bits I need to understand? The key bits I need to understand is that there's a large choice, and there's this long list, so this is the language method, a long list of different types of meat, fish and fowls. Yeah, so a long list of different types of food that are preserved that you can buy where? At the market. Yeah? And so all that Victorian stuff, when you pull out the key bits and just look at it calmly, it means there's a long list of meats that are smoked that you can buy at the market. Of much more recent origin are the methods of preserving foods in bottles and tins. This system is due to a Parisian named Appert. So we know that. Yeah? It's due to a Parisian. Now, if you didn't know where Paris was, you didn't know, and you could guess it's where he comes from, and that's his name. You don't have to be able to say any of those things out loud. You're in an exam, you shouldn't be talking. But you just know that that's his name, and that's where he comes from. He placed meats, vegetables and fruits in bottles, brought them to the boil, and hermetically sealed the openings. Once again, hermetically. You might not know what that means, but look at the whole sentence. Just take a calm second, breathe in, breathe out. He's put meat, vegetables and fruits in bottles, and he's boiled them. He's doing that to make them last longer, so then he seals the openings. So from that we can work out that hermetically must be something to do with sealing out the air and the germs for hygiene reasons. You don't have to have the full scientific explanation. You just have to know that it's just meaning he's really well sealed those openings. Yeah? So he's bottling, he's jarring. It is true that before his day it had been the custom to put foods in vases with or without water and vinegar and pour on an air-impervious seal of oil. Okay, so there's another word there that might scare you. Impervious. Take it out. What's the context? So they're putting food, I'll click off. They're putting food in vases with or without water and vinegar, and they're putting on a seal of oil. So they're putting on a layer of oil, yeah? So air impervious must mean that the layer of oil is separating the food from the air. It's just think it through step by step. They're putting on a layer of oil to preserve it. It's in water, they don't want the air touching it, and we've got this word impervious. It must mean it's like a seal, it stops it, yeah? And the word seal is there. So from the context you can work that out. If you couldn't, you could still say, you could just leave this out in your mind. So let's do that, let's say, and leave that out. Okay, so what's happened? In fact, I'm not leaving out that because I know what seal means. Oh, it's an air seal. It seals out the air. Look. So it's true that before this day, it had been the custom to put foods in vases with or without water and vinegar and pour on an air seal of oil. Left that word out, and I've still got the overall meaning. And if I quoted seal of oil, it would actually mean the same as air impervious seal of oil. It would actually mean the same. So rather than getting really hung up on the word impervious, if I look at the whole sentence, I can work out from the context that it just means they used to seal it with oil. What's the problem though? There was no lid on top of the oil. What could you do with it? So this Appert guy, or Appert, he's fixed it. So, but Appert's system was a great step in advance and gave rise to the enormous trade in tinned and bottled foods. Okay, enormous trade in tinned and bottled foods. That sounds fairly modern. In fact, quite a lot of this sounds fairly modern. So he's made a great step in advance, so he's made it better, and there's a big trade in tinned and bottled food. Okay? Because it's Victorian, it's a new trade. To us, it's an old trade. For years, the system was chiefly applied to the preserving of expensive delicacies. That we find unusual because we associate it with things like baked beans and stuff, everyday foods. But when it was new, it was very exciting. But it was ultimately adopted in Australia and America for the packing of cheap foods, such as beef and mutton, and afterwards rabbit, soup, salmon and lobster. There's lots of lists in here. If I'm looking for my methods, there's lists and lists. There's lots of lists of three. There's a lot of facts, yeah, and adjectives like expensive to tell you about the quality of the food. But you can see from this sentence, this sounds fairly modern. And if I was stuck, I would write about this, and I would write about the list as my method, and just ignore the bit I didn't understand. In the early stages, Australian meat was partly roasted, then packed in tins, which were boiled in a water bath or by steam and then sealed down. Though the meat was cheap, it was somewhat overcooked, and therefore neither tasty nor nourishing. Improvements have been steadily produced, and now the meat, fowl and fish imported abroad in tins is usually excellent. Okay, so we're going to stop there because of the time. It goes on, but that's because I've copied and pasted a whole chapter out. This is probably as much as you'd get in the exam. And you can see here, improvements have been steadily produced. Well, we know what improvements mean. We know what produced means, and we know what steadily means. It sounds Victorian, right up until you break it down. Look, nice little list of 3, meat, fowl and fish. And again, excellent, another adjective. So if I was looking at this, I'd be thinking about the simple methods and the clearest sentences. Good luck, Year 11. Do let me know if you want another Victorian text analysis, because if that's helpful, and don't forget to subscribe.